I go down to focus.
You got to get into character. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just be you. Bring bring the enthusiasm. I want to hear it. Be excited.
They see something walk out into the gravel lot on all fours. And he's thinking it's a bear, you know. So they start slowing down. It walks out into the road and turns and faces. And this, he said, we're looking at this thing. He said, I'm 63 years old. I've lived in West Virginia all my life. Nobody can tell me that's a bear.
You got this.
Welcome to another episode of The Exploring Nerd. I'm Luke.
I'm Dustin.
Today we talked to Les Odell, and he is a Bigfoot I wouldn't say researcher. He's more of a Bigfoot investigator. And he's talking about his Bigfoot experiences and his encounters with Bigfoot. And he has some really cool experiences and stories to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Bigfoot researcher and investigator is pretty similar. I mean, if you're researching Bigfoot, you got to be out there in the field, right?
I'll say so, yeah.
Yeah. This was a really cool episode. I enjoyed this. I think we say that every time, though. People are going to be like, they just enjoy every episode. But no, I do. Every single one.
Yeah, we enjoy talking to all these people, and we enjoy every episode. We really enjoy doing this podcasting thing, and yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. And we got a little bit of news, right? We got some things coming down the pipeline for everybody that listens to the podcast. The Exploring the Unknown is going to have a website.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And you want to let them know about the other
thing? You're on. We are affiliates of Stop. It's a paranormal website that you can go buy ghost hunting equipment.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're looking for some new ghost equipment to get out there and do a little bit of investigating yourself, then click the link down in the description. Go check out what you can find on Ghost Stop. They got a lot of a really good gear. And not only that, but Exploring the Unknown is also going to have merchandise soon.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too.
Yeah. You ready to jump into this episode? I'm taking your line today, buddy.
Let's do it. Hey, how are you?
Good, you?
Good.
Not too bad, not too bad. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into the Bigfoot research?
It didn't start like normal people. A lot of people talk about how they got into it from seeing the Patterson Gimlin film, or they had an experience, or in search of, and stuff like that. Hey, I see someone's got a little child like mine that likes to pop in every once in a while down there.
Yeah.
My son likes to come in every time. No, it had to do when what happened is I had a paranormal experience when I was a kid, and that led me into trying to learn stuff. You know, as a kid, I started reading stories and books and or listening to stories and reading books, and I would listen to any kind of paranormal story, ghost story. I just loved it. And, you know, some people turn away from it, but I just embraced it. And then later on, as I got older, I started talking to people, and they, would tell me things. And then I had a son that when he was, I think it was rated around 11 or 12 years old. His mother and I had already divorced, and he come over one weekend. I said, "What do you want to do this weekend?" He's like, I want to go ghost hunting." So we bought some equipment and just started out with a couple recorders and stuff like that. And then that led into us doing some investigations as he got a little bit older. So we investigated some residential areas. We did some of the bigger known locations, or we just go to local graveyards and stuff just to hang out and do that stuff. Well, we had a little group started, and that lasted for a few years. and just life gets in the way with everybody. You know, people have jobs and everything, so it kind of fell to the wayside. And but me and my son still talked about certain things and experiences. And one day he comes up to me and we were talking, and he's like, "Hey," he said, how you feel about Bigfoot?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, it's always been in the back of my mind. I mean, I know about the subject a little bit." And he said, "Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and stuff like that, and you're really getting into it." So I started listening to some podcasts, and I started listening to Sasquatch Chronicles, the Confessionals, and a few other ones. And he he's like, this would be really cool if we can get into this. And I was like, well, how about we start a page on Facebook to where people can come and share their experiences of all kind, whether it's Bigfoot, aliens, ghosts, whatever, it doesn't matter. So we started West Virginia Cryptids and Strange Encounters, and it was slow at first, and all of a sudden, I think it was in October. I think it's been 7 years now. So it was in October. In February, we had a couple hundred people. I shared one ghost or local lore about a ghost in Huntington, West Virginia, and that got shared and caught on. And people, and next thing I know, we went from a couple hundred people to a few thousand people, and now it's up to like 22,000 people or so, somewhere in there on there. But it started out ghosts, and I would share like a monster of the day story from around West Virginia, or a local lore story. And then I shared a couple things about Bigfoot, and people started sending me messages and saying, "Hey, I've experienced that. I've seen that. Or, would you like to come check my place out, or check the property out, or where my sighting was?" And I did some of that, but I've more talked to a lot of people, because a lot of their experience has been like years and years ago. So I ended up talking to several people. They share their experiences, and that's basically how I got started into it. And next thing I know, people were asking me to come do this. Would you come talk to me? Would you come talk to our group? Would you come and talk? I just got a message a little bit ago. A local library wants me to come and talk to some kids for a summer reading program this coming June and July. So that's basically that's it in a nutshell, pretty much.
Yeah, that's really cool. Have you ever seen Bigfoot?
I can't definitively say I have. I seen something last. I think it was in June. I have to look it all up again. I believe it was in June. It was last summer. I was actually traveling for work going into Elkins. I don't know if you guys know where Elkins is, and right as you come into the Randolph County line is right where the one sign that says Elkins so many miles, and it's up at the top of a knoll, and you can look down and see the Tiger River. Well, as I was traveling, I always, because I travel through here all the time. That's one of the area, especially one area that I go to investigate, research, whatever you want to call it. But I always look at the river. And this time when I went by, I seen something standing on a big rock in the middle of the river. And I still can't say that I've seen a Bigfoot, but in my mind, it's still, the picture's still in my mind. It was bigger than a fisherman would have been if there was like somebody fishing there. It was bigger than a bear. I remember, it looked like it had broad shoulders. So, at first glance, I thought maybe something like that, or it was a dead log had washed up, stood up along the rock. So I turned around and went back, and no, there was nothing. There was nothing there on that rock when I went back. So something biological standing on the rock. I just don't know exactly what it was. So I've been back 2 or 3 times to check the area out, and then the last time I was there, a woman that lives in the area had told me, she goes, my son had a sighting somewhere in the Elkins area. And then she seen where I posted on Facebook that I was in Elkins, and she had him call me while I was in Elkins. And he told me about his sighting in November last year. And it ended up only being 2.5 to 3 miles away from where I had my possible sighting. So.
Oh, wow. Did you have something to say, Luke?
We got into the Bigfoot thing by listening to the Confessionals and Sasquatch Chronicles as well.
Yeah, those are probably our two go-to podcasts.
Yeah.
Now, what's the most compelling pieces of evidence that you've found out there?
I have found a couple prints that I've casted. That's probably, as far as the physical evidence I found. I'll say, they're always up they're subject to scrutiny, all the time. Every footprint is, every cast is.
Yeah.
But to me, they look like a print. The one actually right here, I don't know if y'all can see it. It's not the greatest. This is the 3D printing of it. And you probably won't get it in the light here. This is one, you can see the heel right here. And it comes up. There's the toes across there. Yeah.
Wow, that's wild.
They're trying to get a better view of it there, but that's a 3D printing copy of the one I took in Tucker County in 2020. I was there was a real there's a like a little span of a few days there. We had real warm weather. It was like in January. It was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 days. And I was like, man, I'm gonna take advantage of this because I know there was a storm coming in within another couple of days. So one of my sons and I, and we went to Tucker County. We went to an area called Canaan Loop, and we camped for a couple of days. And as we're walking around looking for stuff, I'd always on the lookout, and I knew that area has been known as a hot spot, not only recently but historically. If you go, well, I guess you'd say historically, as far back as like 50s and 60s, there's been some sightings there and experiences there. So all the snow had melted off in the area we was at, and I knew the storm was coming. I was like, well, I just want to go up and check some stuff out. So we camped and we're walking around. We had put some apples out here and there, and as we're walking back to camp, I noticed that the pine duff, because we was in a pine forest, the pine duff had been disturbed. You could tell anytime you're tracking in pine duff, you don't really want to look for an impression. You want to look for the color change, because most of the top is the normal brown needle collar. Anything underneath of it's usually a gray or black because it's decaying. So I noticed that there was a pressure ridge, and there was some imprint under this tree. And I think the only reason that there's only one print is, I think, because it was under the tree. I think the tree saved it from the snowstorm, and I don't think it was a recent print. I think it was an older print, but I think the tree saved it from the weather. So we found it, and I talked to a fellow researcher, and back and forth, and I said, hey, I think I found a print, and I wasn't sure if there was going to be any detail in it. And he's like, yeah. He said, just cast it, and I did, and the detail showed up. You can see there's only 4 toes. The pinky, if you look at it the right way, it would be a right foot, because it's reversing the cast. The pinky toe's gone, and I think the reason the pinky toe's gone is it just didn't translate into transfer into the pine duff, because there was a small root there, and I think that's what kept it from having a pinky toe. So I casted it, and that was the first cast I ever found. And I eventually found a couple partial prints again, a little ways down the road. I found another one, and it was as I went to a property to do an investigation, I found another one in Fayette County, down around Denise, West Virginia. But that's the most compelling physical evidence I've had. I've had a couple times that I've heard the howl. Still can't tell you what it was, but it was something that I've never heard before. And one of them was in the Tucker County area, the same place I found the first print. I've also found, I'm not big on tree structures or anything like that. I have found a couple things that are interesting, but not very many that I would say were a structure. But as far as this, like story wise or account wise, one of the most compelling ones had come out of Nicholas County. It was you guys want me to share that, or am I just rambling on too much?
No, man, you're doing great. Yeah, go for it. I'm digging it.
Okay. This guy calls me. It's from an area called right outside of Summersville, West Virginia. It was in a little town called Drennan, and there was I think it was Route 39 is what the route number is. Him and his wife were coming down Route 39, and I'll set it up a little bit. There's a bank on the left side, and there's rocks, and And on the right side there was guardrail, and then behind that some woods, and there's a creek. I think it's called Peters Creek. But just at the other end of that guardrail was a gravel lot, a pull-off lot. And they're coming down around the guardrail. They see something walk out into the gravel lot on all fours. And he's thinking it's a bear. So they start slowing down. It walks out into the road, gets into their lane, stands straight up on 2 feet, and turns and faces them. And he slows down really quick, stops, and he said, we're looking at this thing. He said, he said, I'm 63 years old. I've lived in West Virginia all my life. I've hunted West Virginia all my life. I've been in the woods all my life. Nobody can tell me that's a bear. I didn't see a bear. He said, he said, before this, nobody could tell me Bigfoot existed anywhere in the world, let alone West Virginia. Mm-hmm. He said, but what I saw that day is what everybody calls Bigfoot. Well, it continued to cross the road after it looked at him, continued to cross the road, got over to the other side. There was like a ditch, and there's a bank, and there's a rock, like a rock ledge. He went on all fours again and went up the side of that ledge. Like it was nothing. He said, just went right up the side of the ledge. So he calls me, and I was like, yeah, I'd like to come down and talk to you. But one thing they said that wanted me to go more than anything, whenever I talked to him because I talked to him a couple times, him and his wife, mm-hmm. When I asked them to describe what they saw, they would describe what they had seen, but they kept telling me every time they described it, we don't remember seeing the feet. And I just thought that was the oddest thing ever. Why are they telling me you don't remember seeing the feet? So I went down, I met him, my son and I went down, and I carry these little 4x4 pictures. They're artist renderings or whatever you want to call them that you can find online. And I printed several of those out, and I carry those with me to use as almost like a police lineup, or for lack of better words. I almost just realized that Skype come up as my wife's name. But as a police lineup, because I don't have Skype, so she must have had it one time. Anyway, I'll have them look at the pictures, pick a picture, choose a picture of the face that best fits what they saw, or they can look at several other ones and pull out details or features from the other faces, and it gives me a mental picture of what they're looking at. And the other reason I do that is I use it what is called a BS tail. If I look at one of you guys and I'm with one of you guys and we're, because you had a supposed sighting, and I lay those pictures out and you pick one and I can see that you have a reaction. If you're reliving it, you're going to have a reaction. You have a physical reaction. You're going to have some kind of trigger. I'm going to listen to you pretty, more intently than not. But if I look at you and I put that picture out, and you're like, oh yeah, that was that one right there, just like nonchalant, you're probably telling me a fib somewhere down the line. So, but he picked, and I had them interview. I was interviewing, but I would interview, and I have more than one witness like that. I'll try to interview them separately, just to see if I can trip anything up. And it's not against people. It's not against the witness. It's, and it's not necessarily all the time tripping something up, but no matter, even if you're side by side and have an experience, everybody has a different perspective of what they saw. They may, maybe seeing something different in a way or so. So I usually separate people. Mm-hmm. So I did, and I asked the lady, I said, do you mind drawing or sketching what you guys seen? And she did. And I pulled him aside, and we walked around, and I said, hey, I got these pictures I'd like for you to look at. Do you mind picking one out? If since you've seen the face. And he did. And when I compared them, I'm telling you, the face she drew and the face that's on that picture are extremely similar. I mean, extremely. And I don't know if I can find it real quick or not here. But we'll go on. But they're extremely similar. But the picture that she drew, she also drew it with no feet. She stopped at the bottom of the page, about below the knees, right in the middle of the shins. And then again, I thought that was extremely odd, and it was very compelling. So as we're standing there finishing up the interview, it dawned on me, and I looked at the gentleman and I said, do you mind taking my son, standing to him right here along the edge of the road, where you seen this thing come into the road? And he did. He said, yeah, absolutely. I said, well, I'm going to back my car up. And I said, I'm going to pull down toward him. You stop me where you were at. Where do you believe you were at? He said, okay. And he stops me. And the first thing I do is I take my phone, I hold it eye level, and I take a picture. And I get out and I walk over to him and I said, I want to show you something. And I show him the picture, and you could see his face instantly, like he was awestruck, or however you want to say it. It dawned on him why they didn't see the feet. Because in the picture you couldn't see my son's feet from just below the knees down. That means they were that close, you know, to that the hood of the car was blocking that portion of, and so, and that really, like I said, is really compelling, because if a man has hunted all his life like that, and he's lived in West Virginia, we see bear. I mean, I've seen bear. He's going to know what a bear is. You know what I mean? He's going to know. So I've always thought that was one of the most compelling and interesting accounts I've ever taken.
That's crazy. Did he have like a size of this thing, a guesstimate or anything?
Yeah, he said somewhere between 7 and 8, or like 7.5 to 8 feet. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's what it was.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then it just scaled up the side of the rock.
Yeah. So he said it just went
That's
over
terrifying.
Went over on the bank and went to all fours and went up the side of the rock. And I thought that was kind of odd. And then here recently I've been listening to the older episodes of Sasquatch Chronicles, and there was a story in there where the guy said, I think he took another one that had been injured or shot or something. I forget what it was. And this guy claims that it put it on his shoulder and went up, climbed the side of this rock face, like with ease, like there was no issues.
That's insane. That's wild.
Now, when you heard the sound, did you feel any like infrasound or anything? Because they say there's that infrasound with it.
No, I've never experienced that. I know some people say they have, and they call it being zapped and stuff. I've never experienced that. The two times I've heard the howl was one in Tucker County, one in Randolph County. The one in Randolph County was, we were listening with Parabolic Mike, and it was a good long distance away. However, the one in Tucker County, it was me, my son, his friend, and my friend Daniel. And I was there a whole day before. I had already done some hiking by myself, and I, looking around. And Daniel showed up. He was there for a few hours before my son and his friend got there. And I was, telling Daniel about some stories from that area. And there's an old story. There's an old account from that area around the where Canaan Loop Road is the back part of Blackwater Falls. Well, there's an old story from the 60s about some campers and young, like late teens, early 20s, I think it was, some group of young men that were camping, and one of the young men went to pick up firewood for the fire, and he was on the outside of the light of the fire, and he hears something, and then he feels a jab in his ribs, and he turns around, and he's face to face, or, well, I guess you can't be face to face with 8-foot creature, but he's looking at this dark collar 8-foot creature and they said that I had eyes like the hell of the fires of hell. And supposedly this thing took off running, and they stayed in camp because they were too afraid to leave, and they did get up next day and found tracks. And one of the parts of it is they were they were breaking wood, breaking firewood or chopping firewood or whatever they're doing. Well, as my son come in to join me and my buddy Daniel, he stopped at a little cabin that's just like a vacationing cabin, and they put a pile of wood out there from an old pine tree that fell in the yard. It was an old dead pine tree, and they piled out there and it said free firewood. So he stopped, he picked it up, and he brought it to camp. And he had I don't know where he got this axe. Probably from his stepdad, but this axe was just as dull. It's like you might as well have been beating on it with a butter knife. But he eventually split all that wood. And if anybody's ever split pine, even though pine's a soft wood, it's not the easiest wood to split most of the time. So he beat on it for a while, and he finally split the wood up. As soon as he'd done that, we sat down, sitting around the fire, and it was like a few minutes later, we hear this howl like I've never heard in my life. It was loud. It was like I mean, I can't explain it, but it went on. It seemed to go on like 20 seconds or so. And when it did, coyotes everywhere went nuts, just crazy. And my buddy Daniel's like, "That's a squatch. That's a Bigfoot. That's like." I say, "Okay." So the next day, Daniel went home like the next day, and after he had left, my son and his buddy were still there, and I told him, I was like, "I want to go over to where we heard that sound." He said, "Oh, okay." I said, "No, but I want you guys to stay here." I said, "Because the service is not great. You know, if we all get over there and something happens, we get one of us get hurt. We won't be able to get out here to get help." So I said, "Just listen for me. If I get in trouble, I'll shoot in the air 3 times. The typical thing you hear, or the typical thing you would do." And I said, "Plus, you can follow me on the GPS. You can watch me wherever I'm going." So he did, and where we was at, you went through a little pine forest, and then went into what they call a blister swamp or a bog swamp. Bogs, it's like peat moss. It's like 2 feet, and there's water, and it's pretty rough to walk in. And then you walk across this. You have to cross this small stream, and then you get another peat bog, and then you start into the laurel thicket, and then you get up into the hardwood up on the hillside, which wasn't very high because a lot of Canaan and Blackwater Falls area is kind of higher plateau areas. But I started up into that hardwood, and that's where I found a rock stack, I guess you'd say, not little tiny rocks like you see people do along the creeks. This thing was probably 3 feet tall, and the bottom rock was every bit 400 pounds, probably 400 pounds, and then went up from there in size. And then I walked away from it, walked over to another, like a boulder in the ground, and I found it's probably a soccer ball size rock. It was rounded, and you can see where something had been bashing it on that bigger boulder because it was shattered, and except for a big portion of it, just busted all over. So never found any other evidence than that. Didn't see any footprints, and been up there several other times. Never had any. I never heard a howl again. But I was up there another time by myself. I was in the area with some friends that were staying at a cabin. We were doing some we were shooting a little bit of a documentary, and I they wanted me to stay at the cabin. I said, "No, I'm going out to Canaan Loop. I want to go out and hang out there and see what I can hear, and maybe I can find something." Well, I got there late at night, and I had a town and country van that I had set up where I could stay in, and I had a mattress or air mattress in the back. I had my cook stove, everything like that, and so I'm sleeping in the van. But first, or before I went to sleep in the van, I took a recorder and I walked across and put it on a right of way. I put it on this post on the right of way.
Mhm.
And there was sometime during the middle of the night, something on that recorder you could hear coming through the woods. You could hear like twigs, like if when I walk around trying to find tinder for fire, I'll break off little twigs off the pine trees and stuff like that. Well, that's what it sounded like. Then you hear a definite tree being pushed over and breaking and being pushed down. And after that, you hear something on 2 feet run on the gravel road that was where the recorder was on the gate on that right away next to a gravel road. You hear something run on 2 feet past the recorder.
Mhm.
I never heard it with my ears or anything. Like I said, I was sleeping in the van. What that was, I don't know, but it definitely sounded bipedal to me. So it's another
Yeah,
piece of evidence that I really find compelling.
Had you posted that anywhere that we might be able to check it out?
No, I don't have it. It's on. I actually had the recorder. I had it that I used. It was one that's not compatible with my computer anymore, so I've never really
Mm,
posted. I've recorded it on my phone from the recorder and
mhm,
sent it to the people that we were doing the documentary with, and it's in that, but it didn't turn out the greatest sound on that. We're
mm.
doing it that way.
Yeah, yeah. Now the stacking of rocks, is that something typical that Bigfoot does? I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of there are people out there that. Well, let me just say this: everything to me, everything that's out there as far as Bigfoot's concerned, as far as what they do, is completely theoretically theoretical, because
Mhm.
most of it, almost all of it, nobody's ever seen a Bigfoot actually do it. So they say, yeah, Bigfoot stacks rocks. And a lot of them that I have found are, are within the area where people were at, and they're usually the small stacks. But yeah, there are people, researchers, investigators that will claim, Bigfoot stacks rocks, Bigfoot does this, Bigfoot does that. Like I said, it's all, speculation though. But yeah, when you find one like I have that's that big, and it's where it was at, either a human did it or something else with hands did it because it was that big, and the likelihood of somebody actually walking across there just to stack rocks that weigh 300-400 pounds up to a certain, size, probably the size of a basketball, it just I thought it was odd.
Yeah.
I agree. That sounds odd. I don't think a person would waste their time and leave 300-pound rocks just for fun. I mean, I wouldn't do it.
I've stacked rocks before, like in the creek up by camp. Now I'm sitting here thinking like, oh man, people might have found that and been like, Bigfoot was here.
Yeah. Oh, trust me, a lot of people, anytime they see him along the creek, they're like, oh, it has to be Bigfoot. But no, it's most of the time it's people that's doing it.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy though. That's interesting getting out there and hearing the things that you heard. What kind of advice would you give folks that are just like starting to get into Bigfoot research or wanting to get out there and investigate?
Just that, investigate, research, look into the sightings in the area, look into, I like to look into historical sightings, newspaper articles. And I mean, a lot of newspaper articles are calling wild men or devils or something like that, and see if there's actual, you know, substantial, substantial background there that you can go look at. Talk to witnesses best you can, and please don't jump to everything's Bigfoot. Be skeptical the best you can, debunk what you can, and I tell people the best way to prove something's there is sometimes is to prove what it isn't. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it is. And so I'm probably I'm skeptical, I guess, because I, how do I want to say that? My belief is a proxy belief is what I call it, because of people that I've talked to and what they've told me. I still have a skeptical side because I want to find answers, but I don't want to jump to conclusions. Is the best way I can put it. And I think that comes from me going, paranormal investigating over the years, and debunking as much as I could during that. So yeah, definitely do your homework. Do your homework. Do your due diligence and go from there. Don't jump to everything's Bigfoot.
Right. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of the same way. I'm one that I'll believe what other people say, but I have to see it for myself in order to be solidified in the belief.
Yeah. Yeah, the how, and I mean the footprints, like I said, I found a couple, and I found a couple what I think are partial prints, but the how for me was that a little bit of a turning point, because I've never heard anything like that before. And I've heard coyotes, and somebody else told me, well, it could have been this, could have been that. And I guess, and it may have been, because I've never, because there's supposedly there's supposed to be a program in place here. I guess it's already happening in Pennsylvania, where red wolves are being reintroduced in the area. So someone told me that is part of the he works for the forestry department or something of that nature. And he said there's a program in place that they're going to start doing that. So I'm just wondering, it's possible. Maybe that's what I heard. Maybe there is a wolf out there, or I do know there are wolf hybrids in West Virginia that people have. I've been on a property in Braxton County where they had 5 to 6 of them, and they look like large timber wolves. So, maybe somebody had something like that and let it loose. But I don't know. It was something I've never heard before, and it was long drawn out. And it was weird. It was definitely weird, and yeah, it made coyotes go nuts, whatever it was.
That's wild.
It is.
That's wild.
What's your belief on Bigfoot? Like, do you think he's a flesh and blood creature, or do you think he's an interdimensional creature? What's your thoughts on that?
Here for me, I'm open to listening to everything. I mean, the reason I do that is because I feel, because let me see how I want to say this too. For the most part, I don't consider myself a researcher. You know, people are like, "Oh, you're a researcher, you're a researcher." I don't really consider. I consider myself a collector or an investigator. I like to collect evidence. I like to collect stories and like to investigate stories. So I will listen to anything anybody wants to tell me. And I think the reason I do that because I feel that if I don't, I'm doing an injustice to myself as an investigator because I'm not being able to, like I said, being able to prove what it isn't to prove what it might be, you know? And I'm doing an injustice to that witness or client, whatever you want to call them, because they may have seen something weird and strange that's not Bigfoot. But the only thing they have as far as a reference is Bigfoot. You know, maybe they've seen some other type of creature that might be hairy, that might be something this, it might, and that's the only way they can, you know, say what they've seen. It's called Bigfoot. So I will listen to all, but for me, the easiest answer as far as what it is, because it's possible. Okay, because it's the most possible thing is it's a flesh and blood animal. You know, it leaves tracks, it leaves evidence, but that doesn't mean it can't be part of this other stuff. Now, the interdimensional thing, I people see. I don't. I'm not saying I don't believe that, but when it comes to interdimensional and people that are into the interdimensional camp, a lot of times call it paranormal. Yeah, I mean yeah, it is. It kind of is because if you look at the definition of paranormal, it's something that can't be explained by science, basically. Um, but to me, if it's interdimensional and it's coming through, or if it's an alien, it's still a flesh and blood animal. It's not a spirit. It's not a whatever you want to call it as far as ghosts or spirits or demons. It's still going to be a flesh and blood animal most likely. So to me, the easiest thing is to say it's flesh and blood. It's an animal. What kind of animal? I don't know. If you listen to some of the stories, it's definitely an ape type creature. Because you'll hear it looks like a gorilla. The one I
Hmm.
investigated in Fayette County, the guy said it looked like a large gorilla, had a big head, a big gorilla looking head and everything. But then
Hmm.
I've also talked to people that say it looks like a human, that it looks like a feral person. I talked to a guy in outside of Dolly Sods that had an experience in the 90s, and the way he described it, he's when he didn't believe in Bigfoot or anything like that. What he called it every time I talked to him, what he would describe is it was a big, naked, hairy man. His way, and he said it, and he was an anthropologist by, I guess, an educate. His education was in backgrounds in anthropology, and he said it looked like what he would describe as Denisovian, like a caveman type thing. But he said it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
a gorilla. This gorilla looking thing, it was a person. So do we have different types here? Do we have different um, things running around the woods? Do we have a missing link? As far as like Bigfoot and whatever. I don't want to say missing link, but an undiscovered primate. Non-human primate.
Hmm.
It's a good possibility. It's a good possibility. Could it be there are feral people in West Virginia or other parts of the country? Yeah, there can. I don't see why there couldn't be. There's a lot of areas it's not even touched. In a lot of the area in many parts of the world. I mean, they're still finding tribes in the Amazon that's never seen you know modern people. So it's possible that we can have feral people here or wherever you want to, United States. It's possible. It may be like some of the old stories. They called them wild men. That's exactly what they were. They were people that went off the rails. They went out in the woods. They decided to disappear. They went feral, and they were just wild men. They kind of,
Mm-hmm.
the solitude drove them nuts. So that's every bit possible there. But as far as it being, the reason I think it's a possible, like it's is an ape or a primate of some sort, is because it biologically it is possible that there is something like that. It's not something that's uh, just popped out of just popped out of nowhere. We do
Mm-hmm.
know that we had you know older giant apes years and years ago. Giant Pithecus blackie, we had that, and there's been other ones, and there's other primates, and that have been discovered. As far as the scope is of time is you um, concerned, the gorilla was just discovered in the late or the early 1900s. It was considered a cryptid, I guess you'd say back then. I mean, even though the word wasn't really typically used, people would say, "No, there's no such thing as that." But the natives said, "Yeah, this is here," and they finally found them. I forget when the billy ape was discovered, but it's pretty recent, and it was another one that was considered a cryptid, and it's for the most part, it's basically what a lot of people would consider a Bigfoot creature in some countries. The billy ape, for the most part, is not a quadruped. It's more of a bipedal animal, and it's pretty good sized animal. So that's a recent discovery. So why couldn't there be other non-human primates, that's not been discovered, even here in United States?
Right. I've never heard of that. How do you pronounce that again?
The billy ape,
Billy ape?
yeah, billy ape,
Huh. I have to look into that. I've never heard of that before.
yeah.
I have to look into that too. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about gifting? Have you ever talked to anybody that's done that or had any experiences yourself?
Yeah, I know a lot of people that do it. Like I said, I was putting out apples to see if anything, but I've never had any luck with it. Nothing's ever really took something and left it there. An apple might be gone here and there, but it's easily explained by certain other animals.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I've got friends that do it. They'll leave out little trinkets of certain things, or they'll like, well, how do I want to explain that? They'll have a gifting area. They
Mm-hmm.
won't do it everywhere. They'll have a certain designated area, and they'll put certain things out, and they'll have things taken and then replaced with something else.
Mm-hmm.
What's doing it, I don't know. But there are other animals that they're known to do that. Crows are one of the biggest ones. Crows and ravens, especially ravens. Uh,
Yeah.
Raven, one of the big things that people used to do would take like a tuna can, and they screw it to a tree and they put marbles in it, and they were like, "Oh, Bigfoot took the marbles." But ravens will take about anything shiny. If they see something shiny, they'll pick it up, and they've been known to take and bring something, and hey, there's something better than what I got, and leave something. So it's a possibility that something like that happens.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I do know people do it. I don't do it a bunch. I I kind of look. I kind of more look just to see if I can find any hard evidence, tracks or basically tracks. Because like I said, I'm not too big on the wood or the structures and stuff like that. Because too many of them can be explained. There's a few,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, that I found. A few things that I found that's was hard, harder to explain. Um, but like most tree breaks and tree bows that people look at, they're you got to look at them really close. What's above it. If there's nothing above it, snow load could push it over, or look where it's broke or where it's bent. Like I showed a friend of mine here recently. I went to up in his research area, and we found some trees, and I was like, well, you got to look at this close. You can see where the tree had a scar where something had been torn off of it, and it had been several years ago, and it rotten, and it's broke over. Or you can see where a deer had done a rub on it, and it caused it to scar, and that there made it fall over. Things like that. Um, yeah, but I don't know. It's cool out, go out and look and see what you can find, though.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know what you're going to run into out there.
Yeah.
Now, you said that you had a paranormal experience when you were younger that kind of jump started all this. What was that
Yeah.
like?
Well, when I was growing up, and I think now I'm older, I think the reason that we did this is because my dad was having experiences. Well, one, because he was suffering from PTSD, or shell shock as they called it then. He was a Vietnam veteran, but he told me later in life that he was, I guess, tormented and haunted by a young boy. The boy was a teenager, I guess. When he was in Vietnam, he actually shot this kid. The reason he shot him is because the kid came out of the jungle with a machine gun, and my
Yeah.
dad, he didn't. It's just what they're taught, and he didn't think
Right.
about it. And so he swore, told me years later that he swore that this kid would come to him at night in his dreams and sleep, or whatever you want to call it, and would grab him by the foot and try to drag him out of bed. And he suffered from this, and he would also say that other things happened through his life, and he called it. I guess he would had experiences, maybe um, not necessarily as a psychic or anything like that, but he experienced things from a young age, and this was part of it too. But he ended up calling it the Odell curse, and then later in life I experienced things. But what happened is we would move a bunch because I think he would experience this stuff in his house, in the houses we were at, or this dream, whatever he was experiencing with the other boy, caused him to just not want to be there. Wanted to move, wanted to keep moving. So we would move up until I was in sixth grade. We moved every year, and there was a couple years we moved twice a year.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
2 times. So we moved in this farmhouse. He found a farmhouse, an older. I mean, to me, it was like the coolest thing. I mean, it was a big two-story farmhouse, built in somewhere in the mid 1800s, somewhere in there. Had what they call a big sun porch on the front of it, around one side of it. Had a big barn. It set on, I forget how many pieces, how much land, but we were able to roam it, play as kids. But it had a barn. It had a tractor lean-to sheds, and we just thought they were the coolest thing to have, like, a clubhouse, or me and my brother. And we had a big block chicken coop that, well, we used it as a chicken coop. And we also had an outhouse. So I actually lived, I'm 50 years old, and I was say, yeah, I lived in a house where I used an outhouse. Um, but the house itself, when I went inside, even from the first time I got there, it had the oddest feeling to me. I felt uneasy in the house. Uh, I felt, there was parts where you'd walk through from the kitchen to go toward the bedrooms and stuff, and there's stairs that went upstairs. And I always felt like something was going to grab me from the dark rooms there by the bathroom or the stairs and yank me and drag me away, and yeah, I mean, if I didn't have the experience, I'd say that was a kid's imagination. But we were there for a little time, and when you come out of the living room, you went into my mom and dad's room, and then my brother and I's room was off to the right hand side. And this old house had, instead of flip switches, you had push buttons. You had two little buttons about the size of maybe a dime, and you push it and it kicked the light off. Well, the one that went into our room, when you pushed it, there was a lag in it. The contacts didn't, they were sticky or something, and you had about 3 seconds before the light went off. So you pushed the button, we'd run into the bedroom and jump into bed, and we had bunk beds, and I was sleeping on the bottom slot, the bottom bunk, and my brother slept on the top. And I forget how long we were there, but after the little short time we was there, when I'd lay there in bed, I started noticing these shadows. Like, let me set it up for you a little bit. You walk into the room, straight in. Off to the left is where our bed was setting. Straight across from the door, well, kind of off a little bit from the door, across the room was a window, and then there was a corner beside the door and a corner on this side of the door. It's like a typical rectangle square room. But our bed was pushed up against the far wall, like the left hand wall as you went into the room, and the back wall where the window at. That's where our bed was pushed up against in the corner. Like, headboard was against the wall directly across from the door. And I went to, after a little time we was there, I went to bed and I started noticing these shadows that would come from the corner where the door was at on the like diagonal from our bed. And I'd see these not figures. They were almost blobby looking shadows, and they would move from the corner to the window and just repeatedly just keep doing it. And it scared me to death. And I tried to yell for my dad, and I couldn't even. I was so scared I couldn't yell for my dad. And I'd cover my head up, and it'd either fall asleep from exhaustion, or I'd look and I wouldn't see him again. Well, that happened a few times, and then one night I lay down with bed, and I started seeing the shadows again. But this time, when I looked over in the corner, there was one standing in the corner. That was, this house had the 10-foot ceilings in it. This thing had to be about 7 foot tall, standing in the corner. And I could see form on this one. I could see the head. I could see the shoulders. I could see the arms. I could see the gap between the sides and the arms. But from where the waist would be down was just solid. There was no legs. There was no feet. There was nothing. It just a solid dark mass. And again, I couldn't scream for my dad. I'd try, it wouldn't come out. And today, some people say, "Oh, sleep paralysis." No, I was awake. I remember being awake. I remember looking at it. I remember covering my head up, and I do the same thing. I cover my head up and go to sleep eventually, or I'd look and it'd be gone. But it happened a couple times, and then I believe it was the third time. I'm almost positive it was the third time it happened. I seen it in the corner. Instead of covering my head up this time, it freaked me out so much that I actually set up in bed, and I scooted up in the corner to get further away from it. So I scooted into the corner where the bed was in the corner of the wall. And when I did, this thing went from what I now I call it like an overseer or watcher, that it was watching the other ones at the time. It would look at it every time it was looking at these other shadows as they was going in that direction. When I moved into the corner, it went from watching them to looking at me. And within a split second after it looked at me, when I noticed it look at me, it came across the room, tucked underneath the top bunk, and came within 8 to 10 inches probably from my face, leaned in, and there was no facial features. It was all solid, a solid shape. I could see no like facial features, no ears or nothing. It was just a solid shape of a head, shoulders. I could see the arms like outward toward it, or outward toward me a little bit. And the thing is, it wasn't what you hear people talk about today, being a shadow person, or yeah, it was a shadow person or whatever, but it wasn't what they like a shadow, like a completely black, like a cutout, like a blacker and black. It was extremely dark black, but it wasn't. It wasn't. I don't want to put it. I don't want to say solid. It moved. Whatever was inside this thing moved. It was almost like black smoke moving. It wasn't just like a solid blank dark black like a shadow. It
Yeah.
it had something about it that moved around inside the shape. It was almost like a dark, like this black smoke just rolled within its shape. And I remember staring at it, and it just was there in my face. And I don't know how long it was there. It felt like it was forever, but it finally turned away, and when it like turned to its left and floated or glided or whatever how you want to say it, because there wasn't any legs. It went through my mom and dad's door into my mom and dad's room. It went through the door into my mom and dad's room, turned left, and I don't ever remember seeing it again. I remember we moved a little while after that, and then years later, I was actually at my dad's because we were talking, but I told him, I said, "Hey, you want to hear something?" And because I had wrote this story out, and I sent it to I don't know if you guys know who Dave Strader is. He's a podcaster that he's been around for a long time. He's Darkness Dave, Darkness Radio. But I sent it to him, and he read it online, and I let my dad listen to it. And I didn't mention where it was at. I didn't say where it was at. And my dad's like, "Yeah." He said, that was on Michael's heel." And I was like, how'd you know? He said, "Oh, I just know." So either, I don't know, there was clues in there, maybe gave it away to him, or he experienced something there too and knew about it. He just never told me. But that was the only thing he ever told me about it. he said, I know where it was at. So
that sounds terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I still have dreams about it. I don't know, probably once or twice a year. And in those dreams, I'm in that house, and there's a unseen force, I guess you'd say, is what I feel to me, what it feels like in a dream, that chases me through the house. And I'll wake up screaming or crying or whatever because I'm scared to death. And then I'll like, oh, it's a dream. I'll go back to sleep, and it starts right over from the place it stopped. It just continues and just goes on. And that happens at least a couple times a year.
Dang. Do you go out paranormal investigation to still, or is that not?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't done any like residential stuff like that for a while. I still like to go to graveyards. I go to graveyards, hang out. There's an old tunnel here nearby that, well, not necessarily real nearby, but an old tunnel that supposedly has some history. I'll go there. There is a church that's an old 1800 and something church that the graveyard there's lore, there's legends behind it, that supposedly there's a witch buried there. Well, the lady's not a witch, but the graveyard has, and the church itself has some crazy stuff that's happened there when we've investigated. I still go there at times. And then, people talk to me, hey, I've had this experience, I've had that experience, and I'll just talk them through it and, see what's going on and help them out. And as far as like setting down an investigation on someone's residence, I kind of really don't do that no more because of a couple things that happened with some people. Just, there are some crazy folks out there, so you kind of steered away from it a little bit. But if I go with a group, some friends of mine that will go to a location, there's a house that we investigate that's open for investigations now in Braxton County. It's called the Haunted Heyman House. The lady that owns it bought the house, and she had an experience there, and she uses the house to let people come in and they'll investigate. Well, she, she charges it. That's how she's renovating this house. She's actually saving the home. And but I've been there a few times, and over probably the past 4 or 5 years. There's another place in Braxton County I've went to 3 or 4 times. It's called the uh, Elk Hostel, Elk Hotel. It's had some crazy activity. I've been there with several friends, but yeah, I still get out and do it here and there, the best I can, or as much as I can.
Yeah, well, that's cool. We're looking to try to get out maybe this summer to do a little investigating. Maybe throw some things up on our YouTube.
Where are you all out of?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Okay.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What part of PA?
We're like a mile from West Virginia.
Oh.
Well, maybe not a mile. Might be a little bit more than that.
Which side? Are you ever outside of Cheat Lake area or outside of Mounds or oh yeah. Mount Morris or that way or which?
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yo, you're up there on the other side of Wheeling. Or
Yeah.
before Wheeling then. Okay. I was just up there yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was up Moundsville. I was hauling some stuff because I drive truck for a living, and I was hauling stuff from Moundsville to Benwood. So I went right through where you guys are at.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, hey man, we don't want to hold you up anymore. We really appreciate you taking the time coming on and talking to us about this stuff.
Absolutely. I'm glad you guys asked. I enjoyed doing it.
Yeah,
Did you have
I saw you
sorry,
on
Luke, go ahead.
a flyer for Bigfoot Mything Legends or something like that up in Somerset, PA.
Yeah, Daniel Benoit was putting that one on.
Yeah, we're gonna attend that.
All right,
We'll be
cool.
there.
Cool. Come on by.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to plug? Maybe socials or any events that you got coming up that you're speaking at?
I'm doing that one. I'm doing the Grafton Monster Festival in Grafton, West Virginia. I'm not speaking. I'm kind of doing the MC thing at the West Virginia Bigfoot Festival in Sutton. she's gonna kill me. Give me. I got
Oh,
two
you're
other
good.
ones. I got two other ones in PA. Put it that way. One Gwen Purcell is hosting. I just can't remember the name of it right offhand. And there's another one in Central PA that I'll be going to. So there's three of them this year. I'm going to PA. Yeah, you can find me. I have my Facebook page, WV Cryptids and Strange Encounters. Or the YouTube, same thing. I mean, I just get out and do little videos where I go out in the woods and stuff, but nothing spectacular. I'm not out there like, oh, look, it's Bigfoot stuff. But, I go out and that's right before I come on here a little bit ago. That's where I was at. I was in the woods getting my cameras. I had game cameras out for a couple of weeks and in an area where, some people told me they've experienced dogman sightings. So why not put some cameras out, see what's going on?
What do you think about Dogman?
I don't know, man. I don't think it's a natural thing. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird,
Mm-hmm.
So it's. But I mean, people are claiming to see this thing.
Yeah.
I've never experienced anything like it, but the two people that I talked to that had their experiences, I mean, where I was at is only about 3 miles from my home,
Mm.
and their experiences were only like maybe a month apart. Their
Mm-hmm.
encounters. So I go over there every so often and have a look around, and like I said, I've had cameras over there now for a couple weeks. Never caught anything. Didn't caught anything. I caught some deers and squirrels and a raccoon. That's the only thing I caught.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually had some locals that had an encounter that not far from where we live, actually right in between where I live and where he lives. We've been trying to get them on. They was on what's that show they was on, Luke?
These words are haunting, or something like that.
Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's on. That was on like a Discovery or not Discovery. Oh shoot, Destination, wasn't it? That channel, Destination Channel.
Mm-hmm.
They're a travel channel, one of the two.
Yeah,
One
well,
of the
it was
two.
one of the two. Yeah.
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 Well, hey man, yeah, we don't want to hold you up anymore. We keep talking about this. We'll be here all night.
Hey, it's I have a good time talking to y'all. I always do. Yeah, you ever want to hit me up, get me, hit me on Facebook, say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I'm always willing to talk to people, and I'm not one of those folks who'll keep everything secret, Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. And
I
same to you,
I
man. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think we're going to find out what some of this stuff is. We all need to share what we're experiencing and what we're finding out.
Yeah, that's it.
If we don't, you're just never going to figure it out. Yeah.
Right.
If you're closed minded about your investigating, or you're talking to other folks, and it's just never. Sometimes you have to open a different door to see a different
Mm-hmm.
view. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep. Yep.
All
All
right,
right,
guys.
man. You have a good night. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
You're
All right.
welcome. Have a good one.
Bye.
Wait, I thought it was just stop.
That was cool, man.
His theory with the when I asked him if he thinks it's interdimensional, and he said he believes it's a flesh and blood creature, but it could be interdimensional.
Mm-hmm.
That really interested me, because I never thought about it that way. Like, it could still be flesh and blood, but it could be interdimensional.
Yeah.
I thought that was very, very interesting.
That is interesting. I don't know. I kind of lean towards more. I mean, it's got to be flesh and blood, right? I mean, it's out there and making imprints in the ground. That's got to be a physical thing.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, but who knows, man? Who knows? Maybe it's an alien.
Maybe. No, I really enjoyed that conversation. He was cool to talk to.
I think the community is. I don't know how I want to word this, because it's like everybody that we've talked to that's been in the Bigfoot community has just been really nice people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've enjoyed all the conversations that we've had up to this point.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Are you ready for the Would You Rather?
I am.
Okay. Actually, this one's a little bit different. You're walking through the forest. It's dark. You hear the cracking of twigs in your surroundings. And as you turn the corner to shine your light to see what it is that is following you, you see two red glowing eyes approaching you from the darkness. Outstretched are two hairy arms and hands holding what looks like a weaved dream catcher made of vines. Bigfoot is offering you this vine dream catcher. Do you take it?
Hell yeah, I'm taking it. I'm gonna hang it up in my house. So that'd be badass. Be like, you come in, someone sees it. I'm like, oh, that's a cool dream catcher. Where'd you get it? Bigfoot made it for me.
What if it's like a trap? Like, what if he's just trying to lure you in?
I'll take that chance.
Damn. Taking a risk. Well, I guess I'll see you on tomorrow's milk carton.
You're telling me if Bigfoot handed you a big, badass dream catcher, you wouldn't take it?
And I don't know, man. I don't know that I would. Because you gotta think, you ain't never seen Bigfoot before. This is your first encounter with Bigfoot. You're not gonna approach it cautiously. I mean, this thing's big. It could pluck your head off like a grape.
I still would be cool to have a dream catcher made by Bigfoot. I'm sticking along with that.
Well, I'll come over and check it out whenever you get it. Thanks for joining us on this intriguing adventure into the world of Bigfoot research with Les Odell. Keep exploring the mysteries of the unknown, and don't forget to subscribe for more captivating adventures. You know what? I'm keeping it. I rolled through it. It's good. Tell them where they can find us, buddy.
You can find us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I think that's about all.
Yeah, just about anywhere that you can stream podcasts, you will find us. I think we covered about everything.
Yeah, thanks for listening to this episode. We'll see you next week.
Thanks very much, guys. Have a good night.